from the year 1971 in the Atlanta Constitution. Bowling rolls strike in Soviet. The article starts, "The man who said you can't do business with the Russians never tried to sell them bowling alleys, or for that matter, roller coasters. Roger Bensiger tried bowling alleys this summer, despite the fact that until now the Russians didn't know a bowling ball from cannon shot. The result? Bensiger's firm will install 24 bowling lanes in a bowling center the Russians are building for a July 1972 opening. It will be the introduction of the sport into the Soviet Union. It was very different from doing business in this country," said Bensiger. "There was tremendous curiosity and tremendous politeness. We had in excess of 40,000 visitors to our exhibit, and there wasn't a fingerprint left on the walls." Bensiger, executive vice president of the bowling division of Brunswick Corporation, went to Moscow last summer after his firm was invited to participate in Attraction 71, a recreational exhibition at Gorky Park sponsored by the Soviet Ministry of Culture. There were 60 exhibits from 14 or 15 countries, primarily European countries, Bensiger said in an interview. The Japanese were represented very broadly, and there were 2 American companies, Brunswick and another firm selling roller coasters. Bensiger said all literature and visual aids had to be previewed by exhibit personnel, but no problems arose. In setting up the exhibit itself, a 400-square-foot inflatable tent to house 2 complete bowling lanes, the Russians were very cooperative and efficient. When we asked for help, they were there, Bensiger said. They seemed to feel an unusual sense of pride, in contrast to some exhibit centers in the United States. Another Russian trait was punctuality. When the statement was made that someone would come to see you at a certain time, Bensiger said, they were there. The exhibit ran August 10 through 31st with the hours from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. devoted to official visitors and prospective customers within the Soviet Union, and the hours from 3 p.m. to 10 p.m. devoted to the general public, about 1,000 a day. The first time a group of officials would come through, Bensiger said, there might be mechanical experts. They would be greatly interested in trying to understand the mechanics of bowling. Another group might be physical education specialists. During their first exposure, they would be reserved except for technical questions and extracting information. Since the exhibit went on for 21 days, many officials returned time and time again as a consensus developed that bowling was a worthwhile thing. They became far less reserved. Eventually, the thing they wanted to do was bowl. Once they tried it, they were pleasantly surprised that they could take a 10 to 16-pound ball, throw it down the lane, and see the pins fall. He said that after the first 2 weeks, it seemed obvious by the amount of time being spent at the bowling exhibit that the Russians were interested and formal bargaining began. Final negotiations began at 4 in the afternoon of the last day and were concluded at 10:30 p.m. I was surprised at their decisiveness. I was told negotiating with the Russians was a very long and arduous process. He advised businessmen dealing with the Russians to be prepared to answer a wide range of technical questions without any, "I'll get in touch with you later on that," delays. Once they tried it, they were pleasantly surprised that persons would be more interested in you as human beings, Bensiger said, than in any commercial exhibit you might be involved with at home. The Russians can be very generous, to a fault. Bensiger said at a reception on the 3rd day of the exhibit, he complimented a woman responsible for architectural planning of recreation parks on the necklace she wore. She immediately took it off and presented it to him. He couldn't refuse and didn't know how to reciprocate, until someone suggested how much winter-weary Muscovites love flowers. The woman official was delighted with the bouquet. Bensiger was gratified at the success fundamental American marketing techniques achieved in Moscow, but said he was not at liberty to reveal the price the Russians paid for their bowling alleys. Asked how his fellow exhibitors fared, Bensiger said, Oh, the Russians bought something from every exhibit, including the roller coaster.